Hello students, welcome to our video. So in this video we are going to see the history chapter 7 of 8th standard. The topic is education and the British rule. Okay, so let's go to the video. So in this chapter, what are the learning objectives we are going to learn from this video, children? That is the history and the evolution of the modern education system in India, and then how the politics of education is linked to the questions of the power and the cultural identity. So let's start with topic. A small warm up to you. That is, this is the picture of the Gurukula system. That means the Gurukul teaching, and this is the image of the modern classroom teaching. So this picture shows the two different methods of teaching, that is the Gurukul system and the classroom teaching in schools nowadays. And the Gurukul system was prevalent in the ancient India, and in this system students were sent to live with a guru, that means a teacher at the Gurukul, and the gurus imparted the traditional knowledge based on the ancient Indian text in the Sanskrit. So at the end of the period, the students paid a Guru Dakshina or gift to the teacher as a gesture of the gratitude. So in the most Indian secondary schools today, the history, geography, political science, mathematics, language and the science are some of the main subjects. So but these are not the subjects that Indians studied before the coming of the British. So our modern curriculum and the subjects we learn now are largely a result of the changes introduced by the British in the sphere of the education. So let us study this chapter to know about these changes. Okay, so first one is the education in the pre-British India. So before the coming of the British, the education in India was imparted through the indigenous institutions of learning such as the Gurukuls, schools, and the Patsalas, Maktabs and the Madrasas. And the curriculum of education in these institutions was aimed at upholding the social customs and the religious values. So the subjects taught included the philosophy, logic, law, poetry, geometry and the astronomy. So the medium of instruction was Sanskrit, Arabic or the Persian languages. So let's see the important persons of the British government. That is, when the British first took over the administration in some regions of India, they were still traders and not rulers. So they were not concerned with the education of the Indians and hence did not interfere. So in fact, some British scholars like the William Jones and the James Prinsep and then the Henry Thomas Colebrook. So these are all the three important persons of the British government, that is the important scholars. British scholars took an active interest in the glorious past of the India by studying the ancient Indian text. So translating the Sanskrit and the Persian works into the English and circulating their findings among fellow Englishmen. So under their influence, the indigenous system of education continued to flourish. So first one is the British expanded and consolidated their rule in India. They felt the need for the Western educated Indians who would act as their agents and help them administer the British Empire in India. So the two factions, the Orientalists and who believed in continuing the indigenous system of the learning and the Anglicists. So who advocated the introduction of the Western science, philosophy and the literature through the English in India. So another one person, that is the Lord Macaulay. He is Lord Macaulay and he is an eminent British politician, was noted the Anglicist, and he called for an educational system that could create a class of Anglicized Indians who would serve as intermediaries between the British and the Indians. So his famous speech in the British Parliament titled "The Minute on the Indian Education" of the February 1835 was responsible for the introduction of the English education in India. So according to his recommendations, the English Education Act of 1835 was passed thereupon, as sum was allocated for the promotion of the higher education. So the medium of instruction in all the schools founded by the British government was changed to the English. So let's see the recommendations. That means exposure to the Western education, realized the drawbacks in the traditional system of the education, and some of the persons in Indians, that means like the Raja Ram Mohan Rai, and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar and Dayanand Saraswati went to the great lengths to incorporate all that was good in the Western education system into the traditional system. And in the women, that means the education of the women, for example, was an welcome and a much needed introduction. They were supported in their efforts by enlightened British educationalists like the David Hare, John Drinkwater, Bentham, and the Annie Besant. So let's see another one, the important topic, that means the Wood's Dispatch, 1854. So English education in India received a further impetus from the Wood Dispatch. In 1854, the Sir Charles Wood, the president of the Board of Control of the English East India Company, sent a dispatch to the Governor General Dalhousie, and it contained a set of recommendations for the setting up of a system of education from the primary to the university level. Okay, so let's see the recommendations. That means the main recommendations of the dispatch were as follows. That means the promotion of Western education in Indian colleges with English as a medium of the instruction, and the second one is providing the grants in aid for the private institutions affiliated to the government, and setting up of universities in the Calcutta, Bombay, and the Madras along the lines of the University of London. The training and the requirement of the teachers at the teacher training institutes. So the establishment of technical institutions for the vocational training, and the setting up of a vernacular schools at the primary level. So setting up a department of public instruction for reviewing the progress of education in each province and the submitting an annual report to the government. And finally, the analysis of the Western system of the education, that is the education system introduced by the British, had a number of demerits. So the curricula, that means the subjects taught were the modeled on the British system, and were thus out of the touch with the culture and the reality of the India. So as a result, the Indians found it difficult to grasp the subjects and passed examinations merely through rote. And the three universities set up in the Bombay, Calcutta, and the Madras were examining the bodies only did not teach the students. So the new system of focused more on education at the higher levels. As a result, the primary education and the education of the masses was neglected. So the scientific and the technical learning were neglected, as the British only wanted to create a class of interpreters and clerks who would make the work of the British officers easier. So since the English was the main medium of the education at the university level, the masses were enabled to access the higher education. So the no effort was made to translate the Western literature into the vernacular languages. So despite its demerits, however, the Western system of the education was largely secular. To promote the allegiance to the British rule, it nonetheless introduced Indians to the Western concepts of the liberty, equality, justice, democracy, and the nationalism. And moreover, it started the practice of imparting education to the girls' schools, and the colleges reserved only for the girls began to come up in the different parts of the country. So these are all the topics covered in this chapter of part 1 of the chapter children. So let's recap all the topics. That means education in the pre-British India, and the introduction of the Western education system in India, and the Wood's Dispatch in 1854, and the analysis of the Western system of the education. So these are all the topics covered from this chapter children. So we will continue the part 1 and the remaining topics of the part 2 of this chapter children. We will meet on the next video. So hope you all understand well. Thank you children. Thank you all.